Hi, Steph here from the Bead Shop in Nottingham, and today I'm going to quickly show you how to make these really elegant wire wrapped earrings using some very basic materials. So I've got 0.6 silver plated wire, a fish hook, head pin, and I'm using Lapis Lazuli beads in size 6mm and 8mm for this earring. I'm going to show you how to make this herringbone link, which just nicely frames that 6mm bead. I've cut a approximately 30cm length of silver plated 0.6mm wire, and gripping with my round nose pliers approximately sort of 5-6 centimeters from the end, I'm just going to make a plain loop to begin with. We have a video about how to do loops, which I will put a link to below the video. So that is a plain loop to begin with, and we're now going to wrap this excess piece of wire, which is why we need to leave a little bit longer than a standard earring. I'm using chain nose pliers just to grip across the top half of the link so I'm not squashing where the wires are crossing over, and then I'm going to just gently and slow and steadily wrap the wire below the loop so that I'm creating approximately 6 wraps. Now it's good to get them neat, but we're actually going to be hiding this, so if 1 or 2 of your links aren't perfect or evenly spaced, that isn't the end of the world. So now I'm going to trim that excess piece of wire off, and we have the beginning of our link. I'm now going to thread my 6mm bead on from the other end and let that slide all the way down. And here I'm now going to make another link, trying to get it exactly the same distance from the bead as it is on this side, on that side. You can measure that. I tend to do it by eye, and you've just got to remember that it is the distance between the loop and the bead rather than the whole of that section. So it's usually closer than you think. So now I'm just going to make another loop. I just have to be careful you don't catch yourself with the long length of wire, because we need the length of wire to do the herringbone weave, but it does get in the way at this stage. So I've got my loop there, and I'm now just going to wrap in exactly the same way we did at this side, so keeping it nice and level. Good tip with making wraps is if you ensure that you've got a nice right angle between whatever you're wrapping around and the piece of wire you're using to wrap, you usually end up with a really nice, neat wrap. If it starts to sort of point upwards, the chances are it will wrap over itself, and if it starts to point down, you might get gaps. So just keeping an eye on the angle of that wire will help get a really nice, neat stacking wrap. So it should just line up under itself each time. Definitely a little bit fiddlier with a long piece of wire, but if you just keep an eye on this bit of your work and not worry too much about the tail, then you should be all right. So that's pretty good. I think I've got about 6 on each side there. If you end up with 1 more or 1 less, it isn't the end of the world. What we do need to do, and this is quite important, is end sort of on top. So this is going to be my front, so I can see where the wrapper started on that side and that side, and now my piece of wire is technically on the front, so I wouldn't continue and do another half wrap and end up underneath. I want it to be what I'm now going to refer to as the front of the bead and the link. So now we're ready to actually do the herringbone wrapping part. So I always do this with the wire pointing down, so I can hold the link in my left hand and do the work with my right hand, because I'm right-handed. That makes life easier for me. If you're left-handed, you can always switch the way you're holding everything. That's absolutely fine. So with the loop, the link here and the wire pointing down, I'm just going to manipulate the wire so that it wraps itself around the edge of the bead. So again, slow and steady is the key with most things in this little project. So you want that to really go with the shape of the bead there. And then I don't want it too high or too low. If I take it to the side, you'll see that that is just sat along the parallel of the wire wrapping. And now to actually do the wrap and secure this bit of wire in place, I hold the bead and the wire against the bead in my left hand, and then with my right hand I'm just pushing the wire around this wrapped section. So just one full circle round, and that will stop this bit of wire from moving. And now, because I find that action easier, rather than trying to do the bottom bits this way and the top bits that way, I just move the whole link round. So I'm back to doing that on the right side with my right hand. So I'm going to do exactly the same again. The wire's coming from a slightly further distance, which is what's going to give us the herringbone weave effect, and it's going to start overlapping at each side. So this side, still the same thing. So you're wrapping around the bead, pushing it into shape, and then when you reach this side you're still doing a full circle around, but you can't get as close to the bead on this side because the wire's in the way, which is fine. So one full circle round, so the wire will always end up pointing upwards away from you when you've completed a circle. So that's one piece of wire on each side now, and then we're going to continue doing this, but this time you're going to take the wire and push it against the bead again, but just underneath the previous bit of wire. So that is going just underneath. You can push it to manipulate it, but I tend to just in the centre just grip it below and keep my thumb on there while I do the wrap, and that does a lot of the work for you. So there we go, that's what it looks like from the front, and from the side it's just slightly underneath the previous one. And do the same on this side, and you go push it underneath and then wrap one full circle at the end, and then we just keep repeating that. So hold it in the middle, wrap once round, take it to the top, move the whole link round, push the wire underneath, one whole wrap round, and then when you think you're nearly there, I always tend to do one more round because it just makes it look a little neater. So this will give me 4 pieces of wire on each side. So underneath, once round, and then you always want to make sure you have the same number of wires on each side. So that's my 4th on this side as well there. And then when you've completed and you've got 4 on each side, on the very last one you just do a full circle, but then you trim off the excess wire. So cut that off there. If you need to, you can use your chain nose pliers just to squeeze in that last little link. And there we have our herringbone weave. It's really effective and quite simple, although it does take a little bit of practice, I always find, but it's quite a nice way to frame a really pretty bead. Now to turn our link into an earring. So I'm using silver-plated head pin, threading on my 8mm Lapis Lazuli bead. And then, very similar to how we did at the beginning, we're going to add a loop and then just 3 little wraps there. So leaving just a little bit of a gap between the pliers and the bead so we can fit the wraps. Just make a loop. But before we actually do the wrapping, we need to connect this to our link. So I'm just going to slide that down so that the two links connect there. And then when you grip the loop of your 8mm bead, you just have to be careful of the link here just getting in the way. But then everything else is the same, so you keep your wire straight and just wrap around slow and steady, pushing the link out of the way if you need to. I just might squeeze that last little wrap in to make it neater, and then trim off that excess. And if you need to neaten up the last little link, you can just squeeze that in with chain nose pliers. And then we just need to add the fishhook. So turning that upside down and just gently lifting the front in a twisting action. And it's only enough to get the loop of your earring in there. And you just want to make sure you've got them right way around, so the front is at the front, and then you can close that back together and you have a pair of earrings. Well, obviously I made this one earlier, you would do the whole thing again to make your second one, but I hope you like these and you enjoy making them. You can use the links obviously to make bracelets, pendants, necklaces, chains. They're really versatile and they're quite fun to make, and when you get into a little rhythm with them, they get much easier to get consistent, and I just think it's a really nice way of showing off a really pretty bead. Thanks for watching.